My sister was the golden child who could do no wrong. But when I exposed her affair, my parents disowned me, until she left them broke, and they came begging for forgiveness. I'm 29 years old. I work in software development, and honestly, I need to tell this story because what happened with my family basically destroyed me for years. But now, looking back, I think it was the best thing that could have happened to me. I guess I should start at the beginning. When I was a kid and my sister Catherine was, the star of the family, the one who could do no wrong. I'm James, by the way, and Catherine is 3 years older than me, and for as long as I can remember, she was the golden child. Like literally everything she did was perfect for my parents, while I could get the best grades and not even get a well done. It's not that my parents were bad. You know what I mean? They didn't hit me or anything like that, but there was this difference so obvious in how they treated us that even the neighbors noticed it. Catherine would get a B in math, and my parents would celebrate like she'd won a Nobel Prize. I'd get straight A's, and they'd barely look at me. We wanted ballet classes? Boom. There they were, paying for everything. I wanted to join the school robotics club, and they'd tell me it was too expensive, that I should focus on my studies instead. I remember once, I must have been like 12, I think. I won a programming competition at the state level, and my parents didn't even come to the ceremony because Catherine had a piano recital the same day. And when I told them I felt bad, they told me to stop being selfish. That Catherine had practiced a lot for that recital. The thing is that Catherine learned from a young age that she could do whatever she wanted and there would always be someone cleaning up her mess. In high school, she got caught cheating on an important exam, and my parents went to the school to fight with the principal instead of disciplining her. Then in college, when she failed like 3 classes because she was partying all the time, my parents paid for private tutoring and bought her a new apartment closer to campus because, according to them, the problem was that she lived too far away and that's why she couldn't concentrate. Meanwhile, I worked part-time throughout college to pay my own expenses because my parents said it was important that I learned the value of money. But Catherine never had to work a day in her life. Fast forward to when I was like 24. By then, I had already gotten a good job at a tech company, and I was dating Rachel, my girlfriend who's now my wife, and Catherine had just married Jacob. Jacob was, honestly, an amazing guy. Too good for her if I'm being honest. He was responsible, hardworking, had a stable job as a civil engineer, and above all, he was genuinely a good person. My parents were thrilled with the wedding. Like they threw a huge celebration, spent thousands of dollars on Catherine's dress and the venue and everything. When Rachel and I got engaged 2 years later, my parents offered us $2,000 for the wedding because according to them, they had already spent a lot on Catherine's and needed to save for their retirement. Which was a lie because I know they had just bought a new car. But anyway, I'm not here to complain about a lifetime of favoritism, although basically that's what caused everything that came next. Things got ugly like 5 years ago. Catherine had been married to Jacob for about 3 years, and from the outside everything looked perfect. They had a nice house, 2 cars. Catherine worked in marketing for a mid-sized company, and Jacob continued with his engineering career. But I had noticed that Catherine was acting weird, like very distant at family gatherings, always glued to her phone, smiling in a way that I knew very well, because it was the same smile she had when she was hiding something as a kid. One day we went to visit them, Rachel and I, because it was Jacob's birthday and we wanted to bring him a gift. Catherine was in the shower and Jacob was outside preparing the grill, and Catherine's phone started ringing and ringing on the kitchen table. Normally, I'm not one to look at other people's phones, but the screen was lighting up every 5 seconds with messages. And I could see they were from someone named Noah with little hearts, and things like, "Can't wait to see you, baby," and "Last night was amazing." I froze there standing. Literally felt like I had been punched in the stomach because I knew exactly what it meant. Rachel saw my face and asked me what was wrong, and I showed her the phone without touching it. She turned pale and told me I had to tell Jacob, but I didn't know how to do it. I mean, how do you tell someone their wife is being unfaithful? We decided to leave before Catherine came out of the shower because I needed time to think about what to do. Over the next few weeks, I tried to get information from Catherine casually, asking her how work was going and stuff like that, and she mentioned a Noah who was her new co-worker. Super cool, according to her, and that sometimes they went out to lunch, in groups, but I knew it wasn't just lunches. Like 2 months went by, and the situation was eating me alive. Rachel told me it wasn't my problem, that Jacob and Catherine had to work out their things, but I felt like I had to do something because Jacob was a good guy and didn't deserve to be treated like that. Then my parents organized a family barbecue at their house, one of those mandatory events where the whole family has to go and pretend we all get along. Catherine arrived with Jacob, but also invited Noah without telling anyone, introducing him as a work friend who was new in town and didn't know many people. Noah was exactly the kind of person you'd expect. You know, all charismatic and charming on the surface, but you could see he was manipulative if you paid attention. And the worst part was that he started flirting with Rachel in front of everyone, saying things like, "Wow, James is so lucky to have such a beautiful girlfriend," but in a super uncomfortable way. Rachel felt totally harassed and told me privately, and I was furious, but tried to stay calm because I didn't want to ruin my parents' event. But then Noah continued, and at one point when Rachel was getting something from the refrigerator, he came up behind her and said something in her ear that made her turn red with embarrassment. Rachel came to me shaking and told me that Noah had said something super graphic and sexual to her, like really disgusting. And there my patience ran out. You know what I mean? Not only was this guy sleeping with my sister while she was married, but now he was harassing my girlfriend in my parents' house. I walked over to where Catherine and Noah were talking near the grill and told them, "I need to talk to you, Catherine. Now." She looked at me like I was crazy and said she was busy, but I insisted and she finally agreed. I took her to the side of the house where no one could hear us and told her straight up, "I know you're having an affair with Noah and you need to end it right now and tell Jacob the truth." Catherine got all defensive and told me she didn't know what I was talking about, that Noah and she were just friends, and that I had always been jealous and couldn't stand to see her happy. I told her I had seen the messages, that I knew what was going on, and that she had two options. Either she told Jacob or I would tell him. Catherine started crying, but they were fake tears, like the ones she used as a kid when she wanted to manipulate my parents. And she told me that if I said anything, I would ruin her life, that Noah and she were truly in love, and that she was going to leave Jacob anyway, but needed time. I told her that was stupid, that Jacob deserved to know the truth now, not when it was convenient for her. Then Catherine completely changed and got aggressive, told me that if I said anything, she would tell my parents that I had always been a bitter, jealous person who hated seeing her happy, and that no one would believe me anyway because I had always been against her. And that's when I realized she wasn't going to do the right thing on her own, so I made a decision. I went back inside the house, found Jacob, who was chatting with my dad, and told him, "I need to show you something important. Can we talk privately?" Jacob looked confused, but followed me to the living room. Catherine saw us and literally ran after us, yelling not to listen to anything I said, that I was crazy and jealous. My parents and everyone else came to see what was happening. And there, in front of the whole family, I told Jacob that Catherine was cheating on him with Noah. Catherine started screaming that it was a lie, that I was making things up because I had always wanted to ruin her life, and my parents immediately sided with her, telling me, how dare I accuse my sister of something like that without proof. But I did have proof. I mean, not photos of the messages from that day because I hadn't taken a picture, but I pulled out my phone and started searching Noah's social media. Turns out the idiot had posted photos with Catherine in romantic places, candlelit dinners, that kind of thing, and although Catherine wasn't tagged, it was clearly her in the photos. I showed the phone to Jacob, and I saw his face crumble, like I literally saw the moment his heart broke. Jacob asked Catherine if it was true, and she kept denying it, but Noah, who had been watching everything from the kitchen, decided to come over and basically confirmed it all. He said something like, "Look, man, it's nothing personal, but Catherine and I have something real, something she never had with you," and smiled as if it were a normal situation. Jacob just stood there in total shock, and then he simply turned around and left the house without saying anything else. My parents were furious, but not at Catherine, at me. My mom yelled at me, how could I be so cruel to my sister? That clearly I was exaggerating or misinterpreting things, and my dad said I had always been a troublemaker who couldn't stand to see Catherine successful and happy. Catherine was crying and crying, and Noah was consoling her while my parents told me to leave their house. Rachel tried to defend me, but my parents told her she should leave too if she supported me. We left that night, and over the next few weeks, my parents called me constantly, demanding that I apologize to Catherine for ruining her life. They sent me messages saying that Catherine was devastated, that she had lost her husband because of me, that Noah had broken up with her after the scandal because he didn't want drama, and that it was all my responsibility. I explained to them over and over that Catherine was the one who had cheated on Jacob, that I had only exposed the truth, but they didn't want to hear it. My dad finally gave me an ultimatum. Either I apologized to Catherine and admitted I had exaggerated everything, or they considered me dead to the family. Honestly, that decision was easier than I thought. I told my dad that if those were my options, I'd rather be dead to them. Rachel supported me completely, and we decided to move to another state to start fresh away from all that toxicity. I got a better job at a tech company on the West Coast, and we moved like 3 months later. It was liberating. Honestly, like for the first time in my life, I didn't have to deal with constant favoritism or Catherine's manipulation. Over the next 3 years, Rachel and I built an amazing life. We got engaged, we got married in a small, intimate ceremony with just our close friends. We bought a house, we adopted a dog. I had blocked my parents and Catherine on all my social media and phone numbers, and basically acted like that part of my life had never existed. Rachel had helped me go to therapy to process all the trauma from family rejection and the favoritism of my whole life. And honestly, I was in the best mental place of my life. And then, like 6 months ago, something super weird happened. Rachel and I went to a McDonald's near our house because we were craving cheap burgers. You know, those days when you just want junk food without pretensions. We got to the drive-thru, and when the window opened, I almost had a heart attack because there, wearing a McDonald's uniform with a cap and everything, was Catherine. We stared at each other for a second in total silence, and I could see on her face that she didn't expect to see me either. She gave our order to Rachel without saying anything and closed the window quickly. But as we drove away, Rachel told me she had seen that Catherine looked bad, like gaunt, with dark circles, much thinner than we remembered. I tried not to think too much about it, but honestly, I had been shocked to see her like that. A few weeks later, I was having coffee at a cafe near my work when Catherine appeared out of nowhere and sat at my table without asking if she could. She told me she needed to talk to me, that things had been very difficult for her, and she needed help. I asked her how she had found me, and she told me she had been following my car from McDonald's, that she had seen where I was going and had been looking for me. That seemed super disturbing to me, but I let her talk. She told me that after the incident at my parents' house, Jacob had divorced her immediately, that Noah had left her like a month later when he realized she had no money, that she had lost her job in marketing because Noah worked at the same company and had gotten her fired. She told me she had tried to stay with my parents, but they were going through financial problems and couldn't support her, that she had moved to our state looking for a fresh start, but the only thing she had managed to get was the job at McDonald's. Catherine started crying, and this time they seemed like real tears, not the manipulative ones from before, and she told me she was so sorry, that she had ruined her life with her decisions, and that she had no one else to turn to. She asked me for money, basically, money so she could pay for better rent, because she was living in a horrible place with 3 unknown roommates. I didn't know what to say. Honestly. Part of me felt sorry for her because she looked genuinely destroyed, but another part of me remembered all the years of humiliation and rejection and how she and my parents had treated me after I exposed her affair. I told her I needed time to think and that I would contact her later. Catherine gave me her number and left crying. That night I talked to Rachel about the situation, and she told me to do what felt right, that she would support me no matter what. I decided to investigate a little about what Catherine had told me, especially about my parents and their financial problems. I called a cousin who still lived in my hometown and asked him if he knew anything. What he told me was absolutely shocking. Turns out that Catherine, after losing everything, had gone back to my parents crying and asking for help. My parents, being as they had always been with her, let her stay at their house and basically supported her for months. But Catherine met another guy, not Noah, but someone new, and convinced my parents that this guy was her soulmate and that they were going to get married and have a perfect life together. This new guy, who apparently was just as manipulative as Noah, had debts and legal problems, but Catherine painted him as someone who just needed a chance. And here comes the worst part. Catherine convinced my parents to sign a temporary power of attorney, giving her control over their finances, because according to her, she was going to help them reorganize their investments and secure their retirement. My parents, who had always trusted her blindly, signed everything, without questioning anything. Catherine used that power to have my parents sign the deed to their house in her name, saying it was to protect it from taxes or something like that, and then sold the house. Without telling them anything, she took all the money from the sale, like $300,000, and disappeared with her new boyfriend. My parents were left literally with nothing. No house, no savings, nothing. They had tried to report her to the police, but since they had technically signed everything voluntarily, even if it was through manipulation, there wasn't much they could do legally. My cousin told me that my parents were now living in a tiny, depressing apartment, basically surviving on their minimum pension, and that they had aged like 20 years in a matter of months from the stress and betrayal. When I heard all this, I felt a mix of emotions that I can't even describe. On one hand, I felt a kind of poetic justice, like finally my parents had experienced the pain of being betrayed by Catherine after years of enabling her toxic behavior. But on the other hand, I felt bad, because at the end of the day, they were my parents, and even though they had treated me horribly my whole life, they didn't deserve to be left with nothing in their old age. I decided to confront Catherine with this information. I called her and told her to meet me at the same cafe. When she arrived, I asked her directly about what she had done to my parents. Her face completely changed and she immediately got defensive, told me I didn't understand the situation, that my parents had pressured her whole life to be perfect and they deserved what happened to them for being so controlling. I told her that was a lie and manipulation, that my parents had literally given her everything and she had destroyed them. Catherine yelled at me that I had always been jealous and couldn't stand that she had more success, that I had ruined her marriage to Jacob out of envy, and that now I was trying to ruin her new life too. I told her that she had ruined her own marriage by being unfaithful, that I had only exposed the truth, and that what she did to our parents was unforgivable. Catherine started crying again and told me that her current boyfriend treated her badly, that sometimes he hit her but she couldn't leave him because she had nowhere to go, and that's why she needed my help. I told her something I had been thinking about throughout the conversation. I'm not going to give you money, but I'm going to give you information about shelters for battered women and help resources if you're really in an abusive situation. I gave her a list of places and numbers I had researched, told her she needed to take responsibility for her actions and start rebuilding her life honestly, and that I wasn't going to be part of enabling more destructive behavior. Catherine told me I was a bad brother, that she hated me, and left the cafe furious. After that, I had to decide what to do about my parents. I hadn't spoken to them in 3 years, and honestly, I wasn't sure if I wanted to reopen that wound. But Rachel told me something that made me think. She told me that maybe my parents had finally learned the lesson about the consequences of favoring and enabling Catherine's behavior, and that maybe now we could have a different relationship if I set clear boundaries. I decided to write them a letter. A long letter explaining how I had felt my whole life, how their favoritism toward Catherine had affected me, and how their decision to throw me out of the family for exposing her infidelity had hurt me deeply. I told them I had heard about what Catherine had done to them, and that although I felt sorry for their situation, I couldn't just ignore all the damage they had caused me. I offered to meet with them to talk, but only if they were willing to acknowledge their part of responsibility in everything that had happened. My mom called me 2 weeks later, crying. She told me they had received my letter and that I was right about everything I had said, that she and my dad had been terrible parents to me and they were so sorry. She told me they didn't expect me to forgive them immediately, but I wanted to try to rebuild a relationship with me if I was willing. I agreed to meet with them at a neutral place, a restaurant halfway between where they lived now and where I lived. The meeting was intense, super emotional. My parents looked much older, tired, defeated. They apologized for years of treating me like a second choice, for always defending Catherine no matter what, for throwing me out of the family when I was only trying to do the right thing. My dad cried, and I had never seen my dad cry in my entire life. They told me everything Catherine had done, how she had manipulated and betrayed them, and told me they finally understood what I had been trying to tell them for years. I asked them why it had taken so much for them to see who Catherine really was, and my mom told me that sometimes parents see what they want to see in their children, especially in the child they feel needs more protection or attention. She told me, She had always thought Catherine was more vulnerable and needed more support, and that with me she always felt you were stronger and more self-sufficient, but that now she realized that wasn't an excuse to treat me so differently. I decided to help them a little, not because I felt they owed it or because everything was forgiven, but because I didn't want to carry the guilt of leaving them completely abandoned in their old age. I gave them enough money so they could move to a better and safer apartment, and I set very clear boundaries about our future relationship. I told them we could rebuild something eventually, but that it was going to take time, and they needed to respect my boundaries. As for Catherine, I blocked her completely. I sent her one last message telling her I hoped she found the help she needed and managed to get out of her abusive situation, but that I was never going to be part of her life again. I didn't get a response, and honestly, I don't care. Last week, my parents sent me a message thanking me for helping them with the new apartment. They told me they were going to therapy to process everything that had happened, and they hoped that someday we could have a closer relationship. I responded that I appreciated the effort, but I needed to keep taking things slow. Rachel and I are better than ever. She has helped me process all this family chaos and understand that I don't have to carry the guilt of setting healthy boundaries. Sometimes, I still think about everything that happened, and I wonder if I did the right thing by exposing Catherine that day at the barbecue, if maybe I should have handled things differently. But then I remember that Jacob deserved to know the truth, that I deserve to be treated with respect, and that at the end of the day I can't control how other people react to the truth. I guess the moral of all this, if there is one, is that parental favoritism destroys families, that enabling toxic behavior eventually takes its toll, and that sometimes the best decision you can make is to walk away from relationships that don't value you. I don't know if I'll ever have a really close relationship with my parents, and honestly, it's okay if it doesn't happen. I've built my own family with Rachel. We have our circle of amazing friends, and that's enough for me. And as for Catherine, I genuinely hope she finds help and manages to change her life. But it's not going to be with my help, and I've made peace with that.